Hi, everybody. This is May 7th, and thank you for joining us today for the final presentation in the Tufts University Capstone Project that GitLab has been sponsoring. And straight away, I give the floor to the Tufts seniors. So please share your slides and go ahead.
Hey everyone, yeah, I'll go ahead and share my slides. Can you guys see? Cool, and I'll hand it over to Allison.
Thanks, Aria. Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you again so much for being here today. Today we'll be presenting on our senior capstone final presentation with GitLab on improving issue boards. This is our team. Fai's our PM, Aria and Guo are our UX researcher and designer, and myself and Ramona are also UX researchers on this project. And we wanted to extend a very special thank you to the GitLab team, especially Gina and Chad, who have continuously met with us weekly throughout the semester. And everyone on this list has been so amazing in providing information and so much knowledge throughout this project, from research to design feedback. So to get into it, our overarching goal for the semester was to work on improving the usability of GitLab issue boards. And before we dived into user research, we wanted to familiarize ourselves with the issue board itself, since we weren't GitLab users before this. So we conducted the following object mapping to look at how epics and sub-epics would relate to each other, but also how the features across the board would fit into the greater ecosystem.
After we learned more and had a solid background on how issue boards worked, we started our discovery research. However, we were immediately faced by a logistical challenge, which was being blocked by the NDA between GitLab and Tufts, that we couldn't interview any GitLab users. To solve this problem and progress with our project, we conducted preliminary research with guerrilla recruiting, which was a method that we all had never used before. And we reached out to participants through multiple platforms, including Reddit, LinkedIn, Discord, and GitLab's forum, in order to understand how users interact and think about issue boards. And although we had a slow response rate from recruiting, we were able to interview 6 participants and completed affinity mapping with the insights. We found some common themes, but we weren't able to get an accurate understanding of these themes, since all our participants had different roles, including being an engineering manager, product manager, and being a developer, in which they all use issue boards pretty differently. And therefore, it was pretty hard for us to come to a conclusion based on these findings. Fortunately, as we finished the affinity mapping, the NDA in between Tufts and GitLab was approved. So we wanted to conduct a more focused research and narrow down the scope to focus on one most impactful persona, which was product managers. And from narrowing down the persona, we also narrowed down the scope to focus on product managers identifying at-risk issues. We did this by referring to sources such as past existing GitLab research and audits, as well as we took insights from a super customer call that Amanda had. Furthermore, as seen by this usability benchmarking insight, keywords from the pain points include that participants felt like the board lacked an at-glance view, and users had to manually tally up issues and do mental math to summarize the status of issues. So this led us to our new scope being, how do product managers track progress and understand the status of issues?
Based on our new scope, we did our first round of interview and synthesized the general pain points such as visual cluster, search functions, checking progress, etc. We also asked them on their thoughts on AI. So we did receive a lot of valuable input from users, but due to the small sample size, the information we gathered are quite scattered. Nevertheless, we found 2 common themes that are prominent. The first insight is understanding progress. PM said that there's no clear picture in the current layout. They need to gather information from many different places. And the current UI is also a little bit overwhelming due to clusters of labels. For example, one of the participants said that there are too much information to navigate on the board. The search process is also complicated with also some usability issues. And our second insight is jeopardy indicators. This is also related to seeing the big pictures. And some interviewees said that they see status, merge requests, whether comments are added and how many, or a timeline will be very helpful. And these are important information that PMs are looking for in the boards. Thus, we should take in considerations in our further steps. From our research, we gathered all the existing job to be done from PMs from their issue boards based on insights. And then we also chose 4 to focus on, which are decreased time it takes to spot and address any impediments, increased transparency of status for any party, decreased effort it takes to share or report on progress at status, and also increased visibility of blocked or stagnant tasks. So our new problem statement is, as a product manager, it's hard for me to understand current status of issues right away on issue boards. And also takes up to 45 minutes to figure out what's at risk and what's not based on the current layout.
Yeah, and so based on the insights, we did a in-person Crazy 8 session. Essentially, this was done to just generate different ideas based on the new problem statement that we had. And out of these Crazy 8s, we had 3 options that really stood out to us. The first one was option 1, which is a dashboard/banner to show information about just any issues that needs PM's attention. The second option is a visual indicator on the card. So this can be an icon or just any indicators that show this issue might need attention or is at risk. The third one is a timeline view, which is more aligned to the sense of progress. So on this view, you can see kind of like the progress of issues. And ultimately, after discussion, we went with option 1 because we felt like this option can fit into different PM workflows since issue boards can be used in many different ways. And so with that decision, we further iterated based on some of the hi-fi designs. So as you can see on the screen, there are different iterations. For example, on the top left, you can see there's a sprint progress top banner. There's also a drop-down top banner that shows teammate progress and also the capacity. There's different visual treatments for how to display a dashboard. So for example, a center pop-up that shows needs attention issues and also team capacity. There's also a side panel and also a full page dashboard. And on the top right, you can see there's a alert banner with at-risk issue stats card that shows what issues are overdue, unassigned, or have other at-risk conditions. And then after discussion with the team, we decided to kind of delve deeper into the top banner option for 2 main reasons. The first one is that a top banner lets the user stay in context with the issue board, so they'll be able to directly interact with the board and also see the board itself. And the second reason is that it provides a quick at-a-glance information about at-risk issues or issues that need a PM's attention. And we also further focus more on this idea of because there's different things that we can display on a top banner. And we decided to focus on more of a risk/jeopardy view because we feel like this view can be customized to fit with different PM's workflow. So as you can see over here on the cards, they'll be able to configure how these conditions are met essentially. And also the second reason is that this works with existing metadata or just data that GitLab has in terms of labels. So for example, like no assignee, the house status, and also blocked. And so further down the design iteration row, we had some guiding principles. The first one is that aligning to jobs to be done. So how can we align the designs to those of PMs? The second one is what does PMs look for when identifying at-risk issues? And previously in user research, we identified, for example, like the priority, is there an assignee Are there any recent activities or comments? Like these are important things that PMs look for. And the last one is we try to make sure our design can fit different workflows, since issue boards can be configured in a lot of different ways. And so based on these concepts, we decided to conduct concept testing. And with the help of Amanda, we recruited internal GitLab users for this. And so the first concept was a top banner with a filter. When you click on the Show Me button, it shows the filtered task. And we can just see it again. So if you press on, oh, Show Me, yeah. And then the yellow banner shows kind of the reason why these are flagged as at risk. And the second concept, oh, this is already trying to be ahead a little bit. But essentially it's kind of like an expanded version of concept one, where as you can see in the yellow banner over here, there are action buttons. So you can directly take action on these conditions. And so once you're done, you can exit view. And I want to point out there's a toggle on the top right where you can see all these different like cards. And these cards basically show like just what are the risk conditions and how many issues are under that. And also one quick thing that I wanted to point out is that we also design configuration for each of these conditions. So this is for an example for an overdue condition. And so we got some really valuable insights from concept testing. The first one is that all of them preferred concept 2, which is the concept that had the 5 different cards that shows the different risk conditions like overdue, not assigned. The second is that they would like to see at-risk issues with all the other issues, because this can help PMs understand the big picture and also just help them assign people accordingly. The third insight was that the toggle button on the top right, it wasn't super visible. Like most of them didn't really notice it in the beginning. And the last insight is we had an action button for them to directly like add assignee or like set due dates, but the insight really made us think like, do we really need it? Because normally PMs, they do need to click into an issue to get more context to make any sort of like these decisions. And I just wanted to point out this quote from a product lead who is not from GitLab. When he saw a mix of concept 2 and 1, he basically asked like, so when would this be in production? I want this in all of my GitLab issue boards. And this was just really encouraging for the team to continue to work on these designs. And in terms of the feedback, we did some, due to time, I'll just walk over some of the key design changes. The first one is we added a popover to improve discoverability of the tooltip of the toggle. And the second one is that we added a display all issues checkbox. So this was what we had before. And we added a checkbox, and essentially this is what it looks like when you toggle it on. You can see your at-risk issues and also all the other issues together.
So we conducted usability testing based on our new design with 5 participants who do not work at GitLab. And we also consulted with the GitLab design team for feedback. One challenge we encounter is that many of them actually don't use GitLab issue board. So for usability testing, we asked them to perform 2 tasks. The first one is identify at-risk issues on issue boards, and the second one is to configure no activity card. After each task, we ask them to rate their experience and confidence on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 is not confident at all, and 5 is very confident. So for task 1, all participants rated 5 out of 5 for confidence. And for task 2, the average score is 4.5 out of 5 for confidence, which are both good results. We synthesize our findings, and here are the usability testing insights. The first insight is that turns out PMs do look at metadata, but not all of them. This is really dependent on their own preference and also habits as well as team culture. The second insight is that PMs do appreciate customization of cards and scopes based on their preferences. The third insight is that based on the current design, there are accessibility concerns. For example, the gear button is inside a a clickable card, and the button inside the button is an anti-accessibility pattern. The fourth insight is that some participants did not know the exact meaning of no activity and not on track because these words are very context dependent. And some PMs also find no activity irrelevant to their workflow.
So with that, we'd like to present to you our final designs. Okay, so before we dive in, imagine that you're a PM, it's a Monday morning and there's a stand-up meeting happening in 30 minutes. You use a workflow board specific to a milestone and you need to see if there are tasks at risk of meeting a deadline. But right now, this is what you have. You have to scroll all the way down, check them one by one, and it's just a tedious and kind of like distracting process with everything that you might not need to see all in there.
Aria,
So,
we can't see the
yes.
Figma right now if you're sharing it.
Oh, my bad. Okay.
Okay.
Can you guys see right now?
We can see the slide that says final design and reveal. And now it's a white screen.
Wait, let me share again. Something weird with them. Sorry about that. You guys see right now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay, so that's the drill. Like imagine you're a PM and then you use a workflow board specific to the milestone that you need to see if there are any tasks at risk meeting of the deadline. And yeah, this is what you have right now, like scrolling through everything all the way down to the bottom. And it's just a very like distracting and not super efficient process for this particular task. So yeah, here we introduce the risk view. What if you can see everything at one glance and customize it based on your specific workflow? First, you can toggle to open the risk view, introduce a banner, and you can discover it easily when you're using it for the first time. And here's the risk view dashboard. And I can see that, oh, so there are these tasks that are flagged for this particular reason. Now I feel confident that they just don't appear here for like random reasons. And like this helped me understand why this card is flagged and what I should probably do about it. And if I go to the top right banner, I can also see that these are the different risk conditions, the reasons why these are flagged. And I'm curious what happens if I click into this one. Okay, so I can see the only no activity cards. And now I can also understand what no activity means based on the tooltip. And it also hints at me that I can customize my settings. So if I go here, I can use the sidebar to customize the at-risk conditions. I can choose what labels to display in this view just for myself and this particular board. I can look at the different conditions and what they mean. I can add my own custom conditions. For example, one of the users mentioned that, oh, I can add a condition for no activity based on the stage of QA during like a workflow. And if I click into no activity, I can edit the criteria even further. So let's say there's something that has no comments, labels, or merge requests changed for 5 days after the milestone 17.0 started, then this could be flagged as a no activity issue. And you can change that all you want. I can display all issues and compare along other issues while I'm planning. And if I think I want more vertical space, I can collapse this. So yeah, now with risk view, users can save time and create a calmer, more focused space. Risk view can help you limit the noise and understand the current issue status quickly and easily. It can help you save time. At a glance, you can see information that you previously need to dig up. And lastly, it can work with a wide range of boards and users, including assignee boards and tech leads. And then now I'm going to go back to the final presentation.
Yeah, so with that in mind, we're looking forward to thinking about future directions. And if we have more time, we'd do the 3 following things. Number 1, to test the final design. 1, we want to learn more about how issue board users perceive the risk view and discover more potential use cases. But also 2, fine-tune the customization for more board setups. And in addition, we want to further determine the feasibility and scope of this project. And it would be very good to work with plan team PMs and developers to further flesh out the feasibility and incorporate the prototype from a back-end perspective as well. And in addition, throughout our project, we're very interested with the topic of AI and how it could be integrated to provide more personalized summaries. So looking at how they can also provide recommendations such as suggestions for configuration is an interest as well. And going forward, some learnings we got from this project from the research front is one, we learned about how to design effective research questions and structure it with effective content that would lead to insights that would be very quality driven. And furthermore, as Fab mentioned previously, for all of us, this was our first time conducting guerrilla recruitment. So also looking for various methods that can optimize response rate and various channels that would have a higher response rate. So testing those methods gave us a lot of insight as well. And for a lot of us, this is also our first time working in the DevSecOps space and the technical space of GitLab. So we had to familiarize ourselves with the terminology and agile planning process of PMs. And in addition, we picked up a new tool, Dovetail, which helped us synthesize research and distill them down into key qualitative findings.
Yeah, and during the design process, we also learned a lot. Firstly, we learned that we have to think about our design and problems through the lens of problem and value, and this is thanks to an advice from Amanda. We learned to spend time to think through each step in the job to be done and what user needs before solutionizing. And secondly, we learned about the importance of ideation because where we started from was like a lot different from where we ended up at this stage. So it was really good that we ideated together as a team. And third is to be specific about the interaction details. And this is something that we learned from the feedback from Nick and Chad, like all the Figma comments, they're extremely detailed. So thank you so much for that. And also like the Slack feedback from Gina. We learned how to like build components and we should like we get asked of these guided questions of like, okay, so what should be dismissible, what should not? And we learn to think in terms of like what information we need to surface, how and when we surface them, and if we were to have the metrics on the boards and how is it going to be calculated. So definitely learn to be very specific with our decisions and think these through. And lastly, we learned about the complexities within a system and how this design decision affects different persona, setups, conditions, accessibility, and where a feature lives inside a product. So yeah, with that, thank you guys so much for coming in and listening. And we really appreciate all of the mentorship that we got from GitLab so far. And yeah, we open up the floor to any like comments or questions that you guys may have.
Thank you so much for the presentation. We have a couple of questions in the agenda. So Amanda, would you like to voice your first question?
Happy to. Excellent presentation, team. Really great work on this project. I'm so happy to have helped at all and have been very impressed by your learnings and your dedication to the project. My question is, if you were to mentor somebody who's going to go through this project now that you have completed it, what is the biggest learning that you would pass on to somebody just starting?
For me personally, I feel like it's definitely before they jump into like, oh, let me start designing, let me start doing a lot of things, definitely understand the problem first, understand the product first, and then when they start ideating, think about like what each solution could provide to the end users. And I think like this mindset definitely helped me and the team to like kind of think through the different options that we have and pick the one that makes sense to us at the moment. If anybody else anything to add?
Yeah, I would say to piggyback off of that, just getting really familiar with both the tool and the people that use it. I think having those conversations with PM really helped us understand issue boards better than we could have just going through it ourselves, and, kind of understanding how different users under this persona might have different ways about configuring their issue boards. So understanding these specific use cases were also very useful when we were considering it from the design perspective, but also like how we can generate the appropriate questions to very target the stuff they do on a daily basis.
Yeah, for me to add on, I would definitely say that like trusting the process is really important because as you know, like we had a lot of hiccups along the way due to like our NDA and like we were behind a lot for research. So I definitely think that like when kind of going through this project, it was like we should like make the most of the resources we have and like don't be afraid to like ask for help as like everyone's always really willing to help in this, and like our project at the end turned out well and like we were able to do the best we can, so I would definitely say that.
Yeah, mine is basically similar, which is you don't jump to solutionizing at first. Because when we see a problem, our brain likes to see, oh, where can I come up with a solution? But it's really all about like conducting thorough research, especially on users through like rounds and rounds, and also having as many users as possible. It's nice. And I also think that really just like base every decision on the user research or any research based is very important, because sometimes we assume things that users don't really think. And it's nice. I mean, it is important to know what the user actually think, because sometimes you just don't think like that because you're the designer or you're the researcher.
Yeah, I think, yeah, everybody basically talked the important points. I would just say probably be flexible during the actual like user interviews, just because you never know what they're gonna say. Like agenda is one thing, but I think some things the conversation can go in a complete different direction, and it's okay to be flexible and also just change on the spot. Even though somebody doesn't use GitLab issue boards, you can still get insights on how they plan projects using their current workflow and how we can integrate that into issue boards. So being more flexible is definitely helpful.
Sounds like really great learnings to pass on. Thanks.
All right, I've got the next question. First of all, great work on this project, and yeah, definitely trust the process, because what you ended up with as the problem statement is definitely something that I've heard on the ground as a plan product manager. So like, great job with the discovery. And I like how y'all started really broad, right? But then like narrowed in as you learn more into like a very specific problem. So that was very well done. I have a question around how you think about something like boards, which is a feature meant for the entire team, right? It's something that's many different person building something that's like more specific for PMs. How did y'all think about that? And is there anything more that you'd want to consider as you're building this feature out more?
Yeah, I think one of the key things for the designs is we wanted this to, I mean, like these issue boards can be used in so many different ways, like try to make the design as applicable to different personas, like even, and so I think that's the reason why we decided at first. It's because if you're a designer or a developer, you might not care about these information as much. You can still talk on off and just keep on with your day. That was actually just a good insight that we got from a product designer who we interviewed. She was like, I don't really need these information, but I would see how PMs might find these useful. So I think that's one thing. And I think the configuration part is also interesting. We wanted it to tailor to different PMs workflow based on these configuration for like, what does no recent activity mean for them? And so, yeah, I guess like it's a mix of these things. I don't know if that kind of answers your question,
Yeah.
but if anybody
You're
else wants
basically
to.
like
make it toggleable so it's out of the way in case some specific personas don't really want this information, which it sounds like is something you found during your research.
Yeah, there are definitely like ways to like configure the boards that, oh, what if I want a toggle about labels instead of risk view there because I'm a product manager and or a product designer and don't care about that? Like you can definitely do that.
Okay, thank you.
I think there's another point, which is that GitLab issue board, like one of its strengths is how flexible and customizable it is. So that's also like a point we thought about when we're designing stuff, which is we need to make this feature also very customizable and flexible.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Thank you.
I have the next question. Great job. That was a great presentation. I'm really happy to see how everything came out in the end. You kind of already touched on how you got familiar with issue boards. But I'm wondering, since this was the first product in this like industry space that you used, what methods did you take to get familiar with how the product worked? And like, were there any specific ones that were most helpful to you?
Yeah, I can touch a bit on that. So, for how we first started, like you gave us a lot of existing resources from GitLab. So I think our team spent a lot of time going through the documentation, and we also watched a lot of like YouTube videos where there's like users who like go through like what an epic is, like what a milestone is, and like so it really helped us familiarize with the terminology. And as Allison mentioned before, also conducted like object mapping to kind of understand, you know, how like all the features work together. So that was really helpful for us.
Yeah, and I also found it really helpful to like use issue boards myself, even though it's probably a little bit different from how like, you know, our users would use it. But I think that really helps me put myself in their shoes and become more familiar with how to create an issue and add it to a list and create lists, for example. And we try to like make an issue board into our own to-do list for 2 days.
Yeah, to add on to that, I would say the first round of user research was also very helpful. Having PMs share their screens and just walk through their current issue boards that they may use, and also explain how they structured it that way or their thought process behind configurations, since that was very important in understanding why certain labels were being used and just the decisions leading up to that as well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. This is definitely something we have to consider even onboarding at GitLab, like internally or you know, our external users coming into the product. So, thank you.
Awesome work, team. I have the next question here. You mentioned that you've touched on this a little bit, but you mentioned that there's lots of different ways that people are using boards and that configurability is important. But I'm curious if there were any particular use cases or setups that you saw or learned about that was surprising or something that you didn't expect.
I have a case for that. So this interviewee, he is I think a tech lead, and then on his board, there's like no labels at all. Basically, he just organized everything into epics, and let's say this board, it's organizing like in progress, just started, or end of progress. So there's like no labels, and everything is just organized based on non-label related organizing things.
Yeah, there's also another product lead who basically set up his board lists based on like the different stages of a project. So he would have like 1.0 epic and then 2.0 like sprint. Like that's a very dumbed down version, but essentially the reason for that is when he, I guess, like drag the issues or like move the issues between these lists, it automatically applies the labels for him because these lists are filtered by labels. And so it's kind of his workaround way of not needing to go into an issue to manually add all the labels that he wants. Instead, he like kind of move these issues between different lists for issue boards.
think there's also one participant. He just automated a lot of things using, I think I forgot the exact name, but started with like Tribot or something, which is a GitLab building system. And then he basically coded a program that can like automate assigning labels and something else too. Yes, Tribot, yes.
Awesome. Yeah, it's always interesting to see how people are using the tool. It sounds like there are some interesting workflows and themes there for us to consider moving forward. They definitely align with some of the things that we've seen in our research as well. Thanks for answering that question. My second question is about your usability testing. Love that you had a self-rating scale there on confidence of that task completion. I'm curious if there were other scales that you considered using, and I guess why you kind of ended up focusing on confidence versus something like ease of the task or satisfaction of the task.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, initially I think honestly, I'm just speaking for myself, but I think that was one of the questions that we thought could really understand how they felt about the task. Because in the pre-session questions, like we asked them how confident do they feel about their current workflow. And so we wanted to use basically like the results from the questions to kind of compare with how they feel about their current workflow versus like how do they feel after they complete the two tasks. But yeah, I'm sure there's also other skills that might also surface really good insights. I think at the time we just decided on this one to understand how they feel.
Yeah, that makes sense. And definitely not a critique. I was just curious how you chose that, because there are lots of options. It makes sense to have that continuity from prior interviews and questions as well. Thanks.
Yeah, I think I have the next question. Really great work on this. I loved seeing the process, and I think the dashboard-like solution would work really well. I noticed that the participants for solution validation didn't have experience with boards. Was that intentional? Was there a screener created? And if so, what was the criteria for qualifying for the study?
So we actually did create a screener, and we asked if you have used GitLab issue board before. But some participant, they just wrote yes. But during our actual interview, they said that they've never used GitLab issue board, or they've seen GitLab issue board, or they use similar products that's like Jira that's similar to GitLab issue board. So we could have, I guess, specified the screener question more to target people who use GitLab issue board instead of just knowing what GitLab issue board is or have used like similar products.
Yeah, you get that all the time. People saying that they've used something and then you end up talking with them and it's like, oh, okay, so you haven't. It's tricky when it's a paid study, especially because people want that money. We always try,
but
but
I think lots of users still give us very useful feedback because we ask them to do specific tasks, which is I think they were able to still do it even though they've never used GitLab issue board.
So was the screener looking for product managers specifically? Like, was it more of like tasks they were responsible for, or that job title specifically?
Yeah, so we were specifically asking for PMs, not from GitLab, just in general PMs.
Cool, sounds good. Thank you. I noticed there's not a... Oh,
Go ahead.
I was just going to add a follow-up question, but go ahead.
I was going to say that was the last question in the agenda, and does anybody have any other questions? So Becca, I think that's your moment.
Great, thanks for asking. Yeah, so I was wondering if any other products were looked at, if the final designs were inspired by any other layouts, or where those ideas came from.
Yeah, so we looked into Asana and ClickUp, but then that was just for like the ideation stage when we think about the big dashboard with analytics. And for this particular like risk view idea, I think it just kind of like came out spontaneously when we're just going through a lot of like ideation, just like set down on the Figma file. And the card components maybe come from like just seeing the dashboard, but then just like displaying like in the banner. I don't think we've seen it in other places yet. So it was just like thinking about, okay, so what do PMs really need? It was inspired from like the dashboard ideation where you highlight the issues that need attention. So like, oh, why put it inside a dashboard when you can just like show it directly on the board? So that led to the concept one with just a banner alert that says show me, and then you show all the issues at risk. And then that just led to, okay, what if we can show them like how many issues are at risk, and like you can choose to filter them and configure them further. And that led to the risk view.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I'm working on dashboards for two different teams right now. So it's interesting to me that y'all ended up going in the direction of dashboards too. I think it's a direction that GitLab is trending in. And so I thought that was kind of serendipitous that that was also a direction you moved in, but it makes sense to me. Thanks.
All right. So now it seems like we are truly out of questions. Thank you very much for the presentation. Thanks everybody for coming. And I think we can finish. Does anybody have any other closing words?
Great job, everybody. I don't have any questions. I was there as you were making it, but fantastic.
Thanks for the presentation, y'all.
Really
All right.
good asset, really good presenting skills too. So well done, everybody. It's like professional work. Good job.
Good luck with finals.
All right. Thanks a lot, everyone. And have a nice day. Bye.